The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
George, how are you?
Lions, I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing good. Doing not like unicycle balancing on a candy cane in space good, but like, good.
Sentient unicorn balancing on a candy cane in space.
Unicorns now? That immediately, it went from insane to wrong and insane, but somehow still believable.
Right? Yeah, no, the fact that my brain didn't immediately reject that and be like, no, you screwed that up. It's probably, I mean, this game's pretty out, literally and figuratively out there.
So before we dive into Uniracers, I want to do a rare address directly to the audience. So we have a Patreon for this. Well, I have a Patreon as a podcaster, and we do polls sometimes like, hey, vote on like a movie or a game that we should play. And there's a public one on Patreon right now. So you don't have to give us money. You can just go and decide what terrible movie we should watch. So go, it's patreon.com/lionsandbeta. There's a link in the show notes. There's actually something in the show notes that's worth checking.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know. Yeah, go vote and we'll watch a terrible movie and make fun of it.
Yeah. I think Doom's on the list. I'm pulling for Doom,
God,
personally.
I so hope it's Doom. I really do, because I've been kind of wanting to rewatch that, and I would love for the internet to help. It's kind of like when you're out with a good friend and you're like, no, I really shouldn't have a second slice of pie, and they're like, no, go on, you deserve it. I need the internet to do that for Doom.
Or like when you're at a party and it's or with a group of people and they're like, where do you want to go to eat? And you're like, you don't want to be there, so you're like, oh, we could go anywhere. You're like, I'll make anything work, but you're like please Panera, please Panera, please Panera, please Panera, please Panera, and people are like, I'm thinking Panera, and you're like, man, that's cool. I mean, I'm fully flexible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I could do whatever, but I'm definitely gonna get one of those cinnamon crunch bagels.
But yes, so Uniracers. This was this one was a suggestion from you, specifically because we were discussing it and you were like, I would like, I think you said I want to actually play Uniracers. I want to get a discussion going on this because of how unique the game is, and I can now see where you were coming from.
Yeah, and okay, so I think I've been every time we've been one of us is traveling or we're busy or whatever, we need something that's a little bit lighter. I've been we could play Uniracers. I kind of still want to play Uniracers, and it's we just kept kicking that can down the road. And now that we've spent 2 weeks on it, I'm this game is so weird.
It's so weird. And so I want to get to your, because I didn't play it. I don't have a nostalgia experience for it. But and I want to hear your nostalgia experience for it. But I actually had literally just recently a experience with it where I got somebody else's nostalgia for it.
Nice.
Which was just funny because
you're like a nostalgia vampire. You ate their nostalgia.
It's like they had nostalgia, and I didn't have nostalgia, but I had this microphone. See, here's the mic, and my mic reaches. And was it There Will Be Blood? Anyways,
yes, yeah.
But yeah, no. So I just said somebody said oh, what are you guys doing for the podcast? And I was like, oh, we're doing Uniracers, and they looked dead into the camera and they're like, I love that game so much, and I was like. Okay, I didn't expect to step on any toes. I mean, sure, yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, no, that game's amazing. It's amazing. And I was like, well, and I kind of gave them a little bit of a primer for some of my thoughts on it, and they were just kind of yeah, that's why I loved it. And I was just kind of we're gonna, it's fine, it's good.
So I'll be interested if they listen to this episode, if we then made a loyal fan or if they hate us forever.
Both. It's probably gonna be both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. So my nostalgia goggles for Uniracers is kind of the 90s stereotype writ large, where I didn't own this game. I didn't know anyone who owned this game, and I have no memories of playing this game with anyone else, but I can tell you exactly how this game came into my life, which was the Blockbuster near my house.
There it is.
Yes. So I would, get good grades, or I'd have some pocket money or whatever, and I would go to Blockbuster, and I have vivid memories of just being I don't know, nothing looks good. Let's get Uniracers again. So like, I probably rented this game enough times that I should have just like gone 10 weeks without renting it and just bought it. So like my mental image going into this game is how many times I was like, I could play Uniracers again. Like I could totally play Uniracers again. Now, after having played it, I'm like, maybe this is why I never bought it. And I just rented it because it's like, it's junk food. Like it's really good in like a small bite. And then after that, you're like, I need a minute. I'm going to go eat some vegetables.
And that's pretty much exactly how I played this game, because I was like, all right, and it's like kind of like starting to pick up what it was laying down, and then I was just kind of like, because I was in the select window, and my finger was hovering over like starting another track, and it was almost like there was like an invisible specter over me, like holding my finger up off of the button. I was like, I'm just gonna go do anything else, It wasn't bad. I wasn't frustrated or angry. I was just kind of like, I can't. Yeah. Anyways.
So hang on. Before we jump into the sections proper, we don't usually go out of our way to describe what a game is. I feel like it's appropriate for this game.
Like what defines a game?
No, like what this because everybody knows like what Mario is and like what Zelda is.
Like what the actual game is.
Yeah. So you are a sentient unicycle.
Yes.
That races on a beam, almost like a circular like bounce beam that is kind of candy cane striped, that appears to be floating in like the oh god, what do they call the zone they seal Superman in?
Phantom Zone.
Yeah, so it looks like geometric shapes from the Phantom Zone, and like that's what happens.
Yep.
And there may be a story. I don't have the instruction manual for this game, and I kind of don't want to know, like, because I'll bet there's some really lame 90s story, but like that's it. Like you are a sentient unicycle in geometric space.
Yep. No, I mean, it literally, if anybody wants to get to understand the entirety of the depths of this game, just look at the cover art. That's all you need. Like it literally does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, like with all the other games we played, like you look at the cover art and it does give you some kind of an idea of what you're getting into, but that's just it, man. It's just, it's just unicycles, man. That's
unicycles racing on candy canes in space. So with that, I think we could talk about the visuals, which is the visuals that are pixel art are good, and then everything that's 3D is like gut-wrenchingly terrible.
Yeah. So for me, like the pixel art, one of the choices though that they did make, and we kind of just touched on it, is like so sentient unicycle, right? And I apologize in advance for how many times I'm going to say unicorn, like just so brace up for that.
You've jinxed it now because you only did it once so far.
I know, right? No, I'm calling the shot. It's going to get bad because I've almost done it 4 times. But anyway, so yeah, you're sentient unicycle. But I thought that was actually a really good call from the visual standpoint, because obviously this entire game is about like doing rad tricks and flips and all that fun stuff on your unicycle, right? But they tried to animate a human or anything on the unicycle. There's no way they would have been able to do that elegantly,
No, and because you're trying to do tricks, like tricks are core to the game mechanics. If there was a human on the unicycle, every time you screwed up a trick, I don't know if you've ever seen somebody fall off a unicycle, but it's not graceful.
We had that same friend in college. Yeah, I've seen people eat it on unicycle.
Yeah, and you don't recover quickly, so it would take a lot of the fun out of a racing game if there was a 90-second like rubbing your forearm, going like before you could like get back on your unicycle and resume the race.
Yeah, no, like that would be pretty. It would definitely take away some of the mystique of, like, oh yeah, I just jumped up in the triple axle super spin, whatever. And then, because when you duff it in this game, it just kind of almost does like it's a tire screech, but it's almost like a record scratch where it's like, and then you just immediately recover,
Yeah, and then life is fine again.
Yeah. So no, I thought that because when I thought about it at first, I was like, this is weird. And it made me feel weird. And I was like, am I high right now? I'm pretty sure I'm not. But
and yet here's these sentient unicycles.
Yeah. So something's not adding up, right? But yeah, but then when I thought about it, I was like, well, no, because what's the other option is to actually, even if they did something, where it was like you're an alien, and so they could do like a very simplistic alien. It's just it would make it busy, way busier than what you need it to be, because you just need the unicycle, know?
Yeah, which is, oh my God, that was. Can you take a second to recognize how weird of a sentence that was? Really, you just need the unicycle. And yet you are absolutely correct.
I feel like that's the end or the beginning of like a smash cut in Ocean's 11, like all we really need is the unicycle, and like Brad Pitt sitting there like eating a club and like,
Yeah, and then later it's like you come into the scene where the unicycle's in the scene, but you didn't get to see how they used it, and then you're like, what did they do with the unicycle? So here's the thing. I agree with you that like animating a person or let's say a rider, right? Animating a unicorn on top of the unicycle would be weird.
Oh, no, that's going to help. That's going to help a lot.
Yeah, did you like that? That would be, it would be weird, and it'd be distracting, and it would necessarily change the way the racing took place. That being said, for all of the terrible 3D in the logo and in the level select screen, because it's so bad, it's so 90s shader 3D. God, it's awful. It's awful. It's awful. But the little expressions, I don't know what else you could possibly call them, but the little expressions that the seats give, like when you win a race and he like bows his head and looks like he's all like cocksure, or if you fail and the seat like bangs itself like he's supposed to be banging his head like against the track, like it's they get an incredible emotional range out of a freaking unicycle seat.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Is that when I get and I could tell you for sure that they did a good job with this, because the first race that I lost, you cross the finish line, and the other unicycle is doing its like little like dance, and then you like sulk, and I was mad at the unicycle. I was like, come at me, bro. Like, no, you want to taunt me like that, man? I'm a grown man. I'm gonna take you apart, unicycle. Like, yeah. But so no, they did a really, really good job, like you said, getting somehow a large. It's kind of like the Wall-E effect, where it's
totally,
where it's just kind of like, it's very, very simplistic, but because it's simplistic, it allows a blank slate for you to project emotions on. And if they had put a uniformed unicorn on the unicycle, then then it would have just shattered all of that.
I'm afraid for the game you're setting up here. So there's some variety to it too, right? There's like 3 or 4 like little victory animations, and like 2 or 3 or 4 like little failure animations. If you're the loser, because you usually see the loser whether you're the loser or it's the other racer, so you get to like kind of enjoy both. And so like the loser like falls over or like bangs their head, or they like hang their seat. They like hang their seat in shame. Head, should we just say head?
Yeah, it's their head.
Yeah. And like the winner has like a little spinny dance and a little like, I don't know how to describe this, but like a little like I'm so badass kind of like arm pumping dance. And like a bow, right? Like it's weirdly expressive. And then during the race, the way the wheel deforms into more of an oval the faster you're going, and like the seat gets kind of like flatter and like stretched out the faster you're going, like almost very reminiscent of like the Roadrunner, like that stretched out like long circles. But it's a friggin' unicycle. Like you wouldn't expect to like emotionally identify with like, yes, I, the sentient unicycle, am going very fast. Yes, I, the sentient unicycle, am very excited that I won this insane geometric candy cane race. Like, and yet this emotion is very clearly conveyed. Like it's sort of a triumph.
No, it's really well done. I definitely think that the visuals for visual sake are very good and very solid. And I think that as odd as this sounds, like that the Sonic team could probably like use to go back, and because this delivers on that aesthetic of, because at one point like the unicycle, like you said, it's like leaning forward and it's got like the wheel, and the animation of the wheel does change a little bit because it goes from just you kind of being able to see the spokes to like just a white kind of full, because the spokes are moving so fast that it's just like a blur kind of. And yeah, like all that sort of stuff. At one point, I remember in the back of my head, my mind going like, "Gotta go fast, gotta go fast," and so I was just, just it completely delivers on that. Visuals in service of gameplay, I thought were kind of hit or miss, for a couple reasons. So for one of the misses that I thought, and I don't know whether this is, you want to like this lands on the shoulders of gameplay or visuals, but I thought that they did a lackluster job of telegraphing obstacles, So
oh yeah, no, there's a whole section in my notes about that.
So just to speak of it from it, and we can get into it from a mechanic standpoint later, but like just from a visual standpoint, it wasn't until after I got landmined by something that I could recognize what it was, even if I knew. So there's what would it be? Taffy, bubblegum, glue? What is it? There's
let's go with taffy. I like taffy because candy cane track, taffy trap.
Yep, it's candy, bubblegum, and taffy.
Exactly.
So you hit that and it slows you down, like just any tar effect does in a racing game. And it's purple, which is good. It's purple. It does pop out. So I could recognize that, but it was just more so once it happened, it had already happened to me, So by the time I could see it, even though they did make the visual pop, it was already happening. So, so that kind of, I didn't really care for that. I thought that was a hard miss on the visuals and service of gameplay.
Well, and so this is, I mean, I'm burying the lead a little bit because there's no way to talk about this mechanically without talking about it visually, but I don't know if I've ever played another racing game that was side on. Right? Like you're looking at the profile of the unicycle as opposed to like over the shoulder of the racer. And that means that you have no friggin' idea what is about to happen. So, and there's no map. So you end up in this weird place where the visuals can't indicate to you in any super strong way what's about to happen. Like there's some patterns you start to learn, like, oh, there's, this little like bump usually indicates that I have like a long fall, so I'm going to be able to do like more tricks, or this, indicates that I'm going to flip over backwards and do whatever. But I was trying to, and this may be in there. I did not spend enough time trying to decode it, but the only thing I can think of is that the candy cane striping may be indicative of what's about to happen. So like if it's blue and red, it's about to be, a 180 degree loop. If it's green and yellow, it's going to be bumps. If it's whatever, it's going to be whatever. And I'm not positive that that's the case, but I have like a strong feeling that it is. But even if that's true, that's not that much better than having to memorize the track, because now I have to learn this giant vocabulary of like, okay, there's 8 different color combinations that are coming at me at 1,000 miles an hour. So when I see these colors, I have to remember like, oh crap, that means this is about to happen, which is, I mean, better, but marginally better.
Yeah, exactly. No, and actually, Extra Credits did a video that I meant to review it before we did the podcast, but I didn't. But basically,
you flubbed on research, dude.
I know, right? Just mind blown. To be fair, my mind was already blown from the unicorn unicycles, right?
The uniquely uniformed unicorns on unicycles.
Yes, very unique, in fact. Sorry, I'm just keeping a list of all of the descriptors we're so all this is true. But basically that there's like 3 types of gameplay. Is that there's plan, practice and improvise, right?
Okay.
So basically, the idea is that planned gameplay would be something like Magic the Gathering, right? To where you know the rule set and you know like all the different things that can happen. Or I guess chess. Chess would be a better example of plan. Like you know where all the pieces are, you know what you can do, what all the pieces do, and then you plan what you're going to do, right?
Mm.
Practice gameplay is when you literally you don't have any of that information. So basically what you have to do is do the thing over and over again until you've practiced it to the point to where you know exactly what to do in what order, you know?
Okay.
So there's
Yeah,
no telegraph.
So I'm thinking like a rhythm game, like Guitar
Right.
Hero. Yeah.
Exactly. And then improvise is like it's not a direct mixture of the two, but it's kind of a mix of the two. So an example, and I may be getting this wrong, but like an example would be like Mario, you know, to where you can kind of plan stuff out, but then things can like happen last minute that you have to like improvise around, you know?
Okay.
So this to me, I was getting frustrated with it until I realized that this just falls strongly into the practice category, you know?
Mhm.
Where it's like you've got to memorize the track. You just have to. And I know this is straying into mechanics, but like you just have to memorize it. You know, like once I like each track, like I was like, okay, remember it's like Simon. It's kind of a little bit like Simon in the sense that where it's just kind of like up down left right, up down 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 left right left right. Like these are the orders in which I need to hit the buttons. You know.
Yeah.
So in that sense, you know, like once I realized that, I was a little bit less harsh on the visuals and service of the mechanics because they're not, in my, hopefully in my opinion, they're not supposed to telegraph. You're supposed to memorize the track, you know?
And I guess my problem with that is I can't think of another racing game where that was the case. And that also doesn't feel I suspect there's a reason I can't think of another racing game like that because when you sit down to play a racing game, even a game like this, which has more in common with like kart racing games where there's no weapons, but you like do tricks and tricks make you go faster, you know? So it's like, the 90s had a lot of like skateboard racing games and inline skating racing games and bike racing games and unicycles in space racing games. And like, they were just looking for another, like, what's a rad, you know, racing thing we can do. And I get that, but when I think of a racing game, I don't think of like Simon, like my head is in a very different place. And because of the weird side on camera, you have to play that way. And even, like I said, even if the candy cane striping is telegraphing the information, it's telegraphing it in a way that's somewhat opaque and is given to you in such quick succession that it is almost the same as just memorizing the track. So it's kind of like, well, you know, if you gave me a leg up, you gave me the smallest leg up you possibly could. and the other thing about the graphics that I really want to make sure I got your opinion on, because I suspect it's basically the same, is if you like the way one track looks, you're going to love them all because holy crap, they're identical. Like
pretty much
everything, every track in every cup.
Yeah, kind of.
They're animals.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed. I mean, to be fair, you know, Mario Racing has like the star cup, but they are still cups.
Yeah,
like,
there's no cups. They're just cups with like shapes on them.
Speedy and I forget all the weird names they had.
There's like a turtle. There's snail, turtle, hedgehog, frog.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all, dude. It's LSD all the way down,
yeah,
man.
Pretty much, yes. So, but anyway, like across, they all look virtually identical. Like the background is like geometric shapes. The tracks have all the candy cane striping. The music is the same from, let's just call them cups, from cup to cup. Like there's really no clear distinction of, and there isn't even like that steep of a difficulty curve from cup to cup. Like there might as well just be 20 tracks. There's really no reason to delineate them in that way other than that's like a racing thing to do. But when you have ubiquitous, uniquely uniformed unicorns on unicycles, I don't know why I don't know if I'm going to be able to do better than that. I don't know why you would like force in this other racing trope where you're like, oh, well, you got to have cups. And it's like, no, you don't. We're unicycles in space. Like you don't have to do anything. Nothing makes sense.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree that the visuals are, I don't want to say like static, but like they're not
static is a
very,
good word for it.
they're just not varied. I mean, like you said, I mean, again, you want to know Uniracers, just Google the artwork and it does what it says on the thing. Because I mean, like basically that picture, it's like, and that is all of the tracks,
Yeah.
And you can also like pick different unicycles,
Yeah, I mean, they're colored differently.
Yeah, they're colored differently, but I mean, I think that's it, right? There's no mechanical difference. It's just that.
Oh no, it's just colors.
Yep. Just so I mean, basically, that's kind of it. Is that it's just some of the colors change sometimes, and that's it. Aside from that, you're just going around with universally, ubiquitously unique, uniformed unicorns on unicycles.
Well done. Although I just need to point out to the folks at home, I did mine from memory, and I just totally saw you read that off a piece of paper.
Oh yeah, no. I told you, I'm writing.
So anything else on graphics? Are you ready for audio?
My one final note on graphics, because we've already touched on it 2 or 3 times, is literally I've got the notes that we've covered, but my first note is rad. They're rad, man. Some rad graphics. It really game's rad.
It's dripping with late 80s, early 90s, like, and it's not. I wouldn't go so far as to call this like what your mom thinks is cool, like the way a 12-year-old in a sitcom would complain because their mom got them what's his name's putting challenge. Like, it's not that, but it's about as close to that as you can get. Like, this is very genuinely 90s in a lot of weird ways, where it's the 3D, like the really crappy Super Nintendo 3D, the totally wacky premise, and I mean, and we're about to talk about the music, which is like the most vanilla rock music. It's so generic.
And that's the thing, is that honestly, and we can do some legwork on this and check the show notes. I'm curious, like, how much money was spent in development of this game, because I think that would color my opinion of it a little bit more, because it seemed like that whoever made this, they weren't just going for like a cash grab, like in the sense that this isn't the Toe Jam and Earl Panic on Funk Your Mom. This is this is clearly like some care and energy. Like, I imagine somebody who liked unicycles, and tricks and all those sort of stuff, made this game. But that being said, it does seem like just somebody hammered this game out in a weekend. Like, all the visuals are pretty uniform, and as we're about to talk about, the music's uniform. So it's just, somebody was like, it's almost like this person made this game for themselves, and somebody was like, just sell it too.
It feels very indie, small team, and not in like not like it's bad because it was done by a small team. Like, there's lots of solo developed games that are phenomenal, and there's lots of AAA huge budget games that suck. But it does feel like, if you'd had more money, more people, more resources, like, maybe you would have varied the backgrounds a little bit. But since you only had one artist, they couldn't spend any more time on the backgrounds. Like, maybe if you'd had more than one musician, or if your visual artist was also your musician, they could have spent more time and written. Because I think I checked, like, I'm pretty sure there's literally only 4 music pieces. Like, there's I mean, not counting like the title music, but there's like 4 songs that just play on a loop. So, and literally on a loop. So, like, if you go into a race and you then leave that cup and go into a different cup in a different, like the 8th race down or whatever, like, you will get the exact same song you would have gotten if you had just gone to the next. I checked, like it's, yeah, like they just play the, 3, 4, 5 songs just on a continuous loop.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, like, my note for that is just, just rock. I mean, it's just generic rock music, right? And I mean, okay, so it doesn't clash. Like to me, this falls under the category, and we've used it before. It's just innocuous. It's not bad. It doesn't clash with the theme. Like it didn't. But I couldn't possibly hum it for you if gun to my head. Like I just don't.
Oh no, not at all. And that's actually a little bit of a bummer, because the songs are actually pretty okay. Like because they're very like fast and upbeat and like kind of heavy on the like wah, wah, sort of like Super Nintendo guitar sound. So it's, a race starts and you're like, yeah, this is serious. These, unicycles in space. Like I'm in it. Like I want to win this race and it's intense and my adrenaline's pumping, but they're definitely not memorable, nor do I think they're trying to be. I mean, it's background music. And yet it's like, could you not have written, I mean, it's such generic vanilla rock. Like, could you not done like 7 or 8 of them? Did you really have to stop at like 4?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's kind of like what it is that, I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head at the very beginning, which is this game is, and I mean this lovingly, junk food, So, I mean, it's not, and I mean, I love potato chips. Potato chips are delicious, So, I mean, but this is that. So, I mean, it'd be like if all of a sudden you're like just sitting there, like just eating jelly beans, and then somebody threw a chili pepper in there. Like that's not, you don't want that. You just want the jelly beans. But you're just kind of like, well, maybe like. Like maybe I want some like different, maybe not just like the red and the green, like maybe not just cherry and apple, like maybe a couple of other ones in there. But I'd rather have that than be eating it and then get the whatever because with the jelly beans where you would eat like a brown one and it would taste like peanut butter and death.
Yeah. Or do you realize you're dancing around Bertie Bott's every flavor beans?
Yeah, because I was thinking about the jelly beans, but yeah, basically it's the same. Yeah.
Or popcorn. I had a friend, I think in high school, who loved the popcorn jelly beans, and I'm pretty sure that person went on to become a serial killer because I don't know how you could like the taste of cold waxy popcorn.
No, I mean, like I actually have a complete list here of people who liked the popcorn jelly bean, and it's serial killers and communists.
Yeah, just all the way down.
And it's worth noting though that is a complete list. So if you liked those, you're one of those two things.
Yes, this is a comprehensive set. So I did, separate from the music, which is like really, it's fine. It's whatever. There's music. I did feel like they actually put a fair amount of attention into the sound effects, because each sound effect is unique and communicates whatever that thing is. So like, the wipeout sound effect is only used when you wipe out. The trick, like you got points, you're gonna go faster now sound effect is only used when you successfully complete a trick. The taffy noise is only used when you go through, and there are no other obstacles. That's weird, right? That there's only one obstacle. There's but like the sticky taffy noise is only used when you go through the sticky taffy. And in terms of like how the sound effects service the gameplay, not only are you having information communicated to you about your performance, but the other racer also generates those sound effects. So if the other unicycle goes through the taffy and they're ahead of you, that's like a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, taffy coming up. Like, just thought you should know. Or like if they're just landing like trick after trick after trick, so they are accelerating away from you because they're just killing it. Like you hear that when they are successfully hitting tricks. So like the sound effects, I felt like were actually giving me a huge amount of information, but in a way that was very consumable, because it's like, here's these 5 sounds, you need to know what they mean, and that's all they'll ever mean, ever.
Yes. And I would definitely say, and we've mentioned it before, but because this game is based on speed, you gotta go fast, right? Like when you wipe out, the visual of wiping out like happens and then goes away super fast, right? Because if there was a huge visual lag, that would be frustrating and clashing with the game, one of the game's core aesthetics, right?
Yeah,
so
every time you crashed into a wall in a Sonic game, even though you just stopped and there was no penalty, didn't you feel like the world had ended? Because you were like, I'm not moving all of a sudden.
I'm not going fast. I need to go fast. So the fact that, that they have a sound to convey that information as well, I think was super helpful. Like you said, like I never, especially because, like, for example, one of the tricks you can do is just like a front flip, right? And if you don't, like, there's a sweet spot of where you can land that, and if you land it, then you get the you landed it, noise. And if you duff it, and like, because you're a little too far forward, you get the wipe out noise, and visually those two things don't look that different because it's a gradient, and so you don't know necessarily if you're like near the line, like which side you fell on, but the audio absolutely lets you know.
Yeah, and you do there's like a word that flashes on screen for the trick that you completed, or it says wipeout. And tricks always make you go faster. That is their purpose, because there's no score really. So you gotta go fast. So you want to do as many tricks as you possibly can without wiping out, so that you can maintain the highest possible top speed. And the little visual you get of like, oh, I completed a roll, and now like I'm leaning a little bit more forward, and like now I did a twist, and now I'm like a little bit more forward, and like the tire's a little bit more elongated, and every time you land a trick, you get like a little like trick noise. There's like a little chime, I guess. So like you can see it, you can hear it. Like it's, I think this is why the fact that they chose this weird side-on camera in the era of 4:3 aspect ratio is so frustrating, because everything else the game does is simple and communicated to you clearly. Except the freaking track, which like you need to know. Like that's information I need to have, and there's no way they could really communicate that auditorily. Like it'd be weird if they were like bump coming up.
Yeah, I mean they could like have like some audio cue that happens before the thing happens, but
Sure.
that'd be clunky, and possibly, I mean, it could probably be done well, but again, I think that basically, honestly, the feel I get from this game is just there's a unicorn unicycle enthusiast, and he just just really loved those unicycles, and just like this definitely, like you said, it feels like to me, and it's probably not, it may be this like soulless creation from like a bunch of people in the boardroom, but it feels like literally just a guy, and just really loved trick-based games, like Tony Hawk and all that sort of stuff, although I don't think Tony Hawk was a thing yet.
No, but there were
similar.
skatey, tricky games that went on to inspire Tony Hawk.
Right. So, I mean, like, just love those types of games. Really, like, it was like, oh, I want to do one, but with unicycles, and that's what it was. The one other note I have for sound is just the sounds. So not only are the different sounds, they are different. They're very stark, right? But like and this is something I don't know if we discussed this before, but each of the sounds are good at conveying the tone of the thing that happened. So like the wipeout sound it makes this kind of like like, and it's not horrible, but it's unpleasant. Whereas like you landed the trick sound is like it's like you said, it's almost like chimes, but it's pleasant, and so they did a good job, like, because I actually liked hearing the trick sound effect. Hearing it was satisfying,
which is
so
good, because you need to hear that noise as much as possible.
Right, and so that's the thing, is that even if the noise was just kind of like a like a light car horn going like meep meep, like something like that, like that would get annoying, and so I'd be like, I would try to land just enough tricks to keep going fast, but every time I could land a trick, I did it if for no other reason. Then I was like, I like this noise. This is fun noise. It's neat.
Well, and there's a tiny bit of variance. So like if you land a flip or a twist or a Z flip, like it is a slightly different chime noise. So if you couldn't read and you weren't looking at the unicycle when it landed, you could actually learn like, oh, that means a twist was just landed. That means a Z flip was just landed. And again, if you have just incredibly good memory, you could start to say like, oh, okay, I just heard my opponent land a flip, which means they probably just went off of a ramp, or they went off of like a 180. And I don't think that would help you in a specific way where it's like, oh, okay, I know they just did a flip, so this is what I need to be prepared to do. But it does kind of indicate like, well, if they did a flip and not a twist, they probably weren't upside down, because like the 180, loop thing leaves you upside down. Like you have to flip or roll. So there's like, well, if they didn't do a twist, then they probably were upside down and they needed to right themselves. So like maybe after a lot of repeated gameplay, you'd start to internalize those sound effects the same way you could potentially internalize the colors, if I'm right in my theory about the colors matching up. But I don't know. That all just seemed like, I can't imagine indulging in junk food with enough regularity to start to internalize the sound effects that way, and also enjoying that. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you eat that much junk food, like you've started to internalize it in a dangerous and unhealthy way.
Yeah, no, I mean you don't become a connoisseur of junk food and also like run a 5K. Like those are not two things that you generally see in the same person. No, and actually though I did unless you have some other things to say about the audio, that what you said leads into a note that I have about the mechanics, which is basically that I feel that this game, I agree it's junk food. I think it's junk food for us, in specifically because I don't know about you, but trick-based games is just not really I don't really care, to be fair, I also don't care in real life, I mean, I remember in high school, I had a friend of mine and he was just really into doing that kind of stuff, like tricks with skateboards, tricks with, rollerblades. And I remember at one point, I'm pretty sure I stole this from somewhere, I can't remember where, but like, he was like, oh yeah, check this out. And he like jumped up and he did this like kind of grind along the thing, and like kind of fell off, but he like duffed it a little bit. And I looked at that and I was like, I cannot imagine spending the time to develop the skills required without a clearer understanding of who's going to be impressed. It's just, it takes so much time and energy to get good at stuff like that. And just the time and energy into awesome looking out is just it's not my bag. But that being said, I do think that this is a game where if you were willing to dump hundreds of hours into it, you could really hone it to being like being really good at it, like impressively good.
I think that's probably true, which I have to admit is kind of what it's like to ride a unicycle. like riding a unicycle with because it's a high entry, right? Like just literally riding one at all is hard. And then being good at it is, orders of magnitude harder. And then being able to do like complicated tricks is orders of magnitude harder than that. So like, maybe the game, all of the gameplay choices are in service of being as realistic to what it is like to be an expert unicyclist as possible. Maybe we're the plebeians and this isn't junk food. It's like how poor people used to eat tripe and then they didn't have to eat tripe anymore. So tripe became like high class food.
Or wasn't there like an old parable where, refined like white rice was, for the royalty and, because, and then like brown rice, because it was like considered like it was like given to like the peasants but it's like, no, wait, that's the brown rice is like way better for you. Something like that, like,
oh, there's all sorts of dietary things throughout history. Like sugar used to be used as a freaking currency and salt, but now like junk food is full of sugar and salt. Like we've completely flip-flopped in both directions, like high class to low class and low class to high class. Humans are funny like that, but I am actually starting to wonder, like, are we wrong? Like, is this game, are the things we find annoying about this game intentional design choices? Because the lone developer, I'm now going to believe this game was built by one person.
Yeah.
the lone developer who built this, like, lovingly crafted it to be as in the spirit of the real thing as they could, and they totally hit the mark.
So now I'm picturing, like you see the computer, like the and like you see like the programming language, like being like typed across it, right? And then the camera like slowly pans back, and there's just a unicorn like balancing on a unicycle, like typing out the code. Be like, oh, this game's the best, like.
See, I went to like a much like sadder, like kind of dark place with it, because I'm imagining like the camera's behind the computer monitor and it like pans around, like you hear the typing and it pans around and it's just the sentient unicycle banging the seat against the keys, and then it sits up and stops and it's like, finally my story will be told.
But it has like this really deep, like James Earl Jones voice, you know?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, no, it's totally got to be like the it's like that episode of Star Trek where they like take over Picard's mind just to like give him a history lesson.
yeah. So tangent, just because you mentioned Star Trek, and this was like one of the funniest things I had heard recently. I was speaking with we were playing video games, and we were talking about the episode where Picard, basically lives an entire life, right?
Yeah, so what I'm talking about, where the probe like beams. Yeah.
Talking about the same one. So, and I always say, like, that's how you know that Picard was the best captain, because he then got up and went back to work. Like he didn't, like he just got up and like finished out his shift, and then Frank was like, "So, can you imagine how hard it is to call out sick on the Enterprise after Picard went through that? Like how insufferable he'd be." Frank was like, "I don't know, I'm just not feeling too hot." It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Did you live an entire life and have to like remember your children even though they were never born or existed? No, then get to work."
Yeah, well, I mean, Picard, like, if in the last season he became like a serial killer, that would have been totally believable, because the amount of mental abuse that man suffers is just unreal. I mean, he becomes a Borg and then unbecomes a Borg. Like he lives which I think is far and away the worst thing to ever happen to a character in Star Trek.
I would agree with that.
The probe live an entire life thing. Like, oh my God, it's such a good episode though, but it's so horrible. He oh God, he gets tortured, the four lights thing. Like, dude is tough. Like, yeah. I would never be able to complain to him. Like, could you imagine going to him with like a dispute between you and a peer? like, I think we should do this plan and I think we should do this other plan. And then Picard would just be like, well, you know what I think we should do? Not let the Borg win. It's like,
well, or it's like, you go to him and like, I'm sorry to bring this to your attention, sir, but Jet keeps using my coffee mug, and it's and it's like, the Borg
were not allowed to name their coffee mugs.
But the end of that whole thing was somebody said, like, well, so how do you call out? And one person said, well, like they can heal bones all the time, like automatically, like how. Like what would even constitute calling out sick? And then Frank, without missing a beat, just said, like, I think that you're not allowed to call out sick if you can tell how many lights there are. And so we can come back to Uniracers, but that was like one of the best Star Trek like conversations I had recently.
Yeah, I think I just have to posit this thought to you, and then I swear to God we'll stop.
Yeah, right.
I think in a universe of near perfect health, where like things like broken bones can be fixed almost immediately or over a matter of like a couple of hours, all of your sick time would be what we think of as like mental health days. Like no one ever calls out with a cold, because colds are magically cured, of course, but like you're under a lot of stress and you just don't want to go to work. So you're like, yep, I'm going to take today off work, because if I go to work, I would do a bad job.
Yeah. So
anyway.
You just take the day off, and then you just go and find a video game that enslaves the entire, ship.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to video games.
So I want to specifically call out the controls as a separate thing from the mechanics, because the controls are really tight to the point of actually denying reality. So when you like, if you, a human being, if you jumped up and turned over in the air forward, like, you bent over forward, you've done a front flip. If you jumped up and went over backwards and landed on your feet, you did a backflip, right?
Right.
And your orientation doesn't matter. It's the way you rotated that matters. Uniracers has no such illusions. If you spin to the right, you did a roll. And if you spin to the left, I may be confusing them, but if you spin one way, you do a roll. If you spin the other way, you do a flip, period.
Yes.
So and that's just that. Like if you're rotating backwards, but you're spinning to the left, it's let's say a roll. If you're rotating forwards, and it's like that. I kind of love that. Like I love that the controls are like, this button makes you twist and it's always a twist. This button makes you go forward and it's always forward, but it's not an accelerator. You literally hold right. So like you want to go right, you hold right. You want to go left, you hold left. You want to roll, you press the roll button. Doesn't matter which way the character's spinning, this button makes you roll. This button makes you flip. Like I really admire the consistency of the controls. Like nothing ever tricks you, nothing ever behaves differently. It is always, if you want to go left, you press left. You want to twist, you press the twist button. Like it's kind of, it fits in with the insanity of trying to memorize all of the sounds and the tracks and the visuals and all this other stuff, because it's like you don't really have to think about the controls. They're not complicated.
Yeah, no, the controls are not complicated. And I think that, so one of the main things with this is, doing tricks on the unicycle, right? And so I thought that I'm a little conflicted because it's a racing game most of the time, right? Because there are stages where basically your job is to do tricks.
Yeah, I think every cup has one track where you are by yourself and you have to get a minimum trick score to proceed.
Correct. So I actually really enjoyed those tracks because I thought that because I wanted to be able to do more tricks, but the thing is that if you or cooler tricks, because there's definitely a lot of times, especially when you're just like slamming forward, your best bet is to just keep rolling or tumbling or whatever they call it, but you just do that same one over and over and over and over again, because that's the one you can do like the maximum number of times, or at least that was my experience.
Yeah, the roll / flip, like, or twist, you can do from a regular jump.
Right.
So if you're on a long straightaway, you just do that over and over so that you can go faster. Got to go fast.
Yeah, gotta go fast. But and so then there are times where you're thrown up into the air because the track drops out from underneath you or whatever, and that would be the time to do like some of the really cool, awesome tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Problems, they don't telegraph that, So unless you have the track memorized, which to be honest, I didn't play the game enough to memorize any of the tracks, because I have self-respect. But so, but no, so I didn't get to do a whole lot of tricks except for the couple of stages where that was your sole goal, Yep. And so that was a little disappointing, in my own thought, because it was a little, it took me a little bit longer than I'd like to admit to realizing that you could do more than just roll forward and roll backwards. You could twist on an axis.
Oh, yeah, you can mix and match.
Yeah, and all that stuff. But then once I found that, I was like, oh man. And then I just got my lunch ate on the next stage after I found that out, because I tried to do so many dumb things. But again, I think potentially a good corollary for actual, unicycling, because it's just kind of like, oh yeah, man, I just learned this trick. And then you see somebody do a really awesome trick and you're like, well, time to go break all my bones trying to do that. So
man, that looked easy. I'll bet I could do that. Oh God, my bones.
Yeah.
So I noticed like a weird mechanical thing in racing games is rubber band physics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if this game has really good rubber band physics or if I'm just barely good enough to be successful, because every race I lost, unless I just completely duffed it and gave up the ghost, but every race I lost by a second or less. And every race I won by a second or less. All of my times were, realistically speaking, never more than 3 seconds plus or minus.
Right.
Every friggin' race is neck and neck photo finish.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's rubber band physics, because I feel like the game does give you some data to support that, because at the end of every race, and I kind of loved this, you get a graph. You get a graph of your time versus the other person's
True.
time. And the groupings on those, like you said, like there were definitely some where I was just kind of like, oh yeah, like the delta between me and the other person was so stark because I'm like, yeah, because I screwed up pretty bad,
Right.
But aside from that, normally the grouping's pretty tight. Although one complaint that I had was just, at first I was like, oh, kind of cool, like they gave you a nice little graph, like that's kind of neat. That's neat. Um, why don't you scale your x-axis, you animals? You just what like it's always grouped like all the way like over in the edge. And it wasn't until like I got, like 4 or 5 races into it, where I'm like, oh, okay, so there are some where you have more than 3 laps, and then it will like plot out more. But just scale your x-axis, man. Just like what are we living into like the 1700s? Like this isn't okay.
The data visualization leaves a lot to be desired.
And to be fair, I should have brought that up in visuals, but that's my number one complaint about visuals was that graph is not visually appealing. It does not represent the data well.
Yeah, no, it also, the fact that it's so tightly clustered is evidence that you should be more tightly zoomed in on that, so that like if the biggest difference was between like lap 2 instead of lap 1 or lap 3 or lap 4 and lap 3 or whatever, like being able to see that zoomed in, like, oh, notably I did better on the second lap. Whereas when all the data looks like shotgun, like blasted into the upper left quadrant of the graph, it's like, well, I won, I guess. Like, I mean, I know I took first out of 2, but
yeah, no, I mean, like, and also too, like there was always, and this may just be me just not because I didn't pay super close attention, but on that graph, like there was always a line,
yeah.
I don't know what the line means.
I don't know either. I was kind of hoping you did.
Best guess, it's your like average? No, because
it's like a million miles away.
Yeah, no, so average doesn't make any sense. I don't know. No idea.
Maybe that's like some kind of like embarrassment line. Like if any of your data points fell below this line, stop playing.
Yeah, or maybe it's like because I know that like maybe it's like the track's current record, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think that's it, but I could.
Something.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Track record.
But anyways, yeah. So the thing is, like when I saw the graph, I was just like, oh, neat, a graph. Like I'm a nerd. I like graphs, But then like, I guess it was just like one of the things. You know what it was? It was like somebody singing a song that you love, but just hitting the wrong like a sharp note, But it's in the chorus, and so it's just like every time I was like, yeah. All right, this graph is cool. I like the graph. Well, this is a little off. I hate the person for putting a graph in this. This graph is poorly thought out. This is not okay. It was just like it just kept wearing on me. But
yeah,
yeah,
I feel you. So then, we have to ask, how did it hold up? How'd this hold up for you?
Well, okay. So for me, since I don't have like a nostalgia experience myself, I think that this game does exactly what we said, which is that it's a really good 15-minute play, So, so it's difficult for me to say. Like, in my opinion, I would say it doesn't hold up simply because I cannot imagine someone that I would say it's worth spending the money to purchase this game for such a short playtime, Like there better racing games. There's just so I'm trying to think of like who I would recommend this game to, and there's not anything that this game does that other games don't do better, And I'm
thinking,
even games from that era.
Yeah, and so this is something I'm kind of thinking of that I don't know if we've ever brought this up in reviews of other games, but I would say that this doesn't hold up because we no longer live in an era of game scarcity. We live in an era of like unbelievable game abundance.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
even for someone who is economically disadvantaged and doesn't, they're not just drowning in video games. Like you could go onto the internet on a library computer and just find a random Flash racing game that is probably more fun for $0. Mm-hmm. And it's not that, it's not that this game is irredeemable. It's not even that it's not fun. It's just when you're asking the question, does it hold up? It's like, well, if you're, your coworker, your friend, or whoever it was who has these amazing, memories of this game and still to this day loves this game, then like, yeah, totally. But if you've never played this game before, or if like me, you haven't played it in 20 years and you're going back to it for the first time, it's like, I don't really want to memorize all this Uniracers vocabulary that I need to know for these tracks to be fun, right? Because I was consistently winning my races, even up through like silver and like some of the gold, but I didn't really feel like I was getting significantly better. I felt like I was always just barely squeaking by. And I was like, the amount of work I would have to put in to go from barely squeaking by to being good at this game just seems totally unreasonable. Totally unreasonable.
Yes. No, it's a very, very high skill ceiling. And like you said, like the amount of time you'd have to dump into it to get so good is the amount of time you should be spending eating junk food. And I think to what you said, where, like you said, like I've got a friend who, was just like, oh my God, the game was amazing. I love that game. I mean, it is by definition nostalgia goggles. Like it has to be viewed through nostalgia goggles because like just playing it now, it's not bad. I mean, and I think that's the important difference is most of the games that we've played, they're either good, they either hold up, or they're awful. And I mean, we've played some that are in between, but like generally when we say it doesn't hold up, it's because it's a bad game, and This is not that. This is a bad game. It's just this is the first one I think we've played where I'm like, it's not a bad game. It's enjoyable. It's just there's so many other games that do everything that this thing delivers on way better. So
if somebody liked this game, I would say probably just go play Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Yeah, it's the same kind of vibe. And there's only 4 songs, and you're going to be frustrated when you don't get enough tricks in a row, and it's basically the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think you really hit it on the nail on the head, where it's like you could just go to a Flash player, pick just like literally just if you Googled you probably even get one with a unicycle aesthetic.
You probably could.
You could probably get one with a unicycle aesthetic where you could swap out like the unicycle to, like where you could actually get a rider, but it would be, Link from, just like you could actually put him. That probably exists.
That's the next game. That's what we're playing next.
Oh, Link Uniracers?
Yeah.
Neat.
The curtain falls. The music plays. The credits roll, then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day.